I am Negan.
I am Negan.
I am Negan.
What's up, people? We are back. Welcome back to I Am Negan, a TWD Universe podcast. My name is Adam Vale. I'm a senior editor over at the Koalition, and I'm joined by editor-in-chief of the Koalition, Richard Bailey Jr. What's up, Rich?
What's up, Adam? What's up, listeners and viewers?
And Throwdown Show's Carlos Romero.
Yo, what's going on?
What's going on is we're back. I was trying to think it wasn't too long ago that we got together because we were covering Daryl Dixon, which you could also find here over at thekoalition.com or the Koalition on YouTube or on Spotify and all the other good stuff, sites out there. But it's been a while since Dead City. I feel like it's been years, actually, right? Maybe like 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's about 2 years.
2 years. It's kind of wild to think about it because this was one of the first the major spin-offs. Like, yeah, we had Beyond. Let's forget about that one. Tales of the Walking Dead, that didn't go anywhere. But Dead City was a big deal. We were hyped. This is Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Negan, of course, and we had Maggie. And we weren't too crazy about that pairing, but they were going on location. They were filming in the city, in New York. It was going to be cool, new vibe, new atmosphere. We were hyped on it. So it's, from what I understand, remember they said at the time that it had very good numbers. Right? People were watching it. So I was like, oh, it's not going to take too long for the next season, especially since they're doing these really short versions now, 6 episodes. We see that with the Daryl show, 6-episode season. But man, we had to wait years to get season 2. It's just wild. It's just wild. But I hope everyone has been enjoying all the other shows that are out there in the world. There's plenty of good shows to watch. And here we are now back with another Walking Dead, and Dead City. And I'm thrilled. I mean, we were all excited with Daryl Dixon, especially the ending of season 2. I'm not going to spoil anything. If you haven't, go watch that because it's really interesting how they are leaning into another new location and the story just keeps evolving, which is what we all hope will happen here in Dead City. So again, shout outs. If you have not seen this episode, go watch it, AMC Plus, or when it aired on cable and AMC, watch it there because we will be doing a full recap, discussion, breakdown, and spoiling it. So get ready. This is it. All right. So everybody cool? Everybody ready?
Ready.
All right. Here we go. Boop. Oh man. Slow. You said it best, Rich, before we started recording. It's like, oh, this was slow. Too slow. I just pointed out how long we waited for this show. And for this to come back with a very slow, as if they have plenty of time to tell this story, which they do not, because it's still 6-episode seasons. Maybe if we were back to the long form, 16 episodes and all that stuff, yeah, go ahead. Do the slow burn, do the slow build. No, they spent the whole episode doing this, and it just, man, I want to be excited. I want to have that energy of like, yes, because I mean, it's a part of our core with The Walking Dead. It's just something that we always want in our life. We all love it. People that are listening here and following, and all the followers still on all our socials and stuff like that and other platforms, they are still following us for one reason only, is because they love the universe of The Walking Dead. They love all these shows and they want to keep it going. But man, when you give us something this slow, I don't want to ramble on, but what about you, Rich? I mean, you brought it up. What was slow about it? When did it trigger to you? It's like, man, this is not what I expected for a show returning after such a long break.
Well. First and foremost, one correction. We are getting 8 episodes this season.
Oh, really? Oh, take that back. 8 episodes.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, I had to double check that. Yeah, it is 8
All right.
episodes.
Because I did
So,
see. All right. So I
so
think I know why. All right. Keep going.
but to answer the question, yeah, it's just they took a lot of time to set things up with Negan and Maggie. We already know how it ended last season, where it looks as though they were on opposite sides once again. So obviously now it's going to be leading to the same result. So I don't know why they took so long. This episode to me didn't really pick up until maybe halfway through it. It got interesting. We'll get into that, but yeah, it just felt like they spent a lot of time setting stuff up. We didn't really, I didn't really think they needed to take that much time, but it is what it is.
Carlos, anything you want to say about this intro, or just the fact that it was slow? Or maybe it wasn't for you. I don't know.
I mean, it was definitely slow. I just feel like it took me a while to get into the universe, back into this portion of the universe. It's like you mentioned, it's been so long since the last season. So trying to figure out, who's who, what are the stakes? What the hell happened to Negan? Why is Maggie not in the hilltop? It's just trying to remember everything, downloading everything from my brain storage, trying to figure out, okay,
Yeah.
so where's everyone stand and what's going on? What's the conflict? Most of it was that, and the pace wasn't that great in terms of the way they should have brought you back in, but we'll get in more detail.
Yeah,
with,
there was
the
all right.
story.
So you know what? You're right. Let's just get into that much. Just for those jumping back in, of like, wait, what's going on? What has happened? All right, so this is what's going on. Maggie, Jenny, which is the girl that Negan was traveling
Ginny.
with you. Yep, Jenny. Right, Jenny. Right, Jenny,
Jenny.
and then Herschel. They now all three of them live in their community known as the Bricks. So take it for what you want. I don't know exactly where. They don't show them a map really of how far they are. They're definitely outside of the city area. I don't know if they're in the outer boroughs, but they're further out. They're definitely not in Manhattan. All right, so they live in the Bricks. We see them that Maggie is teaching Herschel how to hunt, and there's that whole little thing that's going on there. But I'm just jumping around because there was a lot of filler on this. Again, we just been complaining about how slow it was. We have Negan. We see that he's in a cell back. Well, we're assuming still back in Manhattan at this point. He has a cellmate that's across the way who he's trying to get food from. He's playing the violin. He's talking. This is the thing that throws me off. Negan starts talking about, like, hey, you talked about that I'm going to be interested or wanting to eat roaches, within my first year of being here. Well, are you implying that you've been there over a year now? Because you see him
Yeah,
eating
that's
the
what I thought
roaches,
so too.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how long? But second, you're well groomed. If that's the case, your hair should be scraggly. You should have a beard and all. You should look disheveled. No, you're just chilling with a hood, and that it threw me off because I'm still trying to figure out, like, why, if that's the case, why are you in this cell for so long? So that's what's going on with that. Marshall, if you're trying to follow with Marshall, if you remember, he came back. He had this weird relationship with Negan. Negan saved him. It was a back and forth because he was out to get Negan. So we find out that he lied to the governor, Charlie Bird, who's the new governor of New Babylon Federation, right? That's what that is called, that area. So
Yes.
and lies and basically told everybody that he killed Negan, and they take his word for it. They're like, oh yeah, he's a great man. And we find out also that he got promoted to colonel from Marshall. Okay, that's what's going on with him. Croat, if you recall, we find out that he is just a grunt. This all the first season, we're thinking he's like the big boss, but he really isn't. It seems that is Dama, or the old lady, as she's mentioned in this episode, is the big boss. Why is she the big boss? How did she get this power? I don't know. Well, no one knows. Right? They don't really go into it either. I thought that would have at least been answered in this first episode,
Well,
because that was the cliffhanger right at the end of first season. We see that.
Well, apparently she's got special powers because she's got a spell over Herschel. So maybe she's got a spell over everyone else.
Yeah. That's yeah. With him with the drawings and all that. I don't know. She did some brainwashing. Something happened. I don't recall how long Herschel was kidnapped for. It couldn't have been that long because remember Maggie found out that once Herschel was gone because they didn't pay dues or something like that with the Croat, then they kidnapped him. So it wasn't that long, but yeah, I agree. Something's going on there. All right. So that's where we stand. We have Maggie, Herschel, Jenny, Bricks. We got Marshall, now the Colonel with um
The new
Charlie
governor.
Bird, the new governor, right? And a second in command of their military force. Rich, you brought up her name. She is from Orange is New Black and a bunch of other projects. I'm blanking on her
Yeah.
name.
Dasha Polanco.
There you go.
That's the actress.
Dasha
Yeah.
Polanco, that's the actress. Yep. She as now plays a major role, obviously going forward in this part of the Federation and building their military. And that's what's going on there. And then the Croat is just a footstool to Dama. So that's where we stand, at least story-wise, what's going on here. So let's just dive into it now. The episode starts off with a big garbage truck, similar to what we saw in the first season, running around town, driving around town, picking up walkers because
It was
they're
in the
making them
trailer too.
methane. Yeah, it was in the trailer. I mean, this is they dump them in this pot, they melt them down, make the methane, and that's what's giving them light and power and all the other things that they have. And it's like, okay, we get that, but this is the part, and then we'll open this up for discussion because this I don't like to nitpick. I feel like I'm always picking on these things, but man, this part really, this is not how I wanted this season to start off because we see Croat, he goes down to the cell to talk to Negan, and he's like, "Oh, have you thought about our proposal?" That whole thing. He's like, "I told you what I said before, and I'm not helping. And I like what I have here. Look at this. I got my own room. I got privacy. I got gourmet meal. He's goofing on everything, still doing Negan stuff. But long story short, because it drags on too long, it's all about recruitment. They just want him to side with them to help to unite the three factions that are on Manhattan because they are aware of what's taking place, which is that the colonel, now with the new governor, want to build up an army to invade the city. Right. And we'll get more into that because they did a lot of back and forth. That's Walking Dead. They're known for the splitting up time. So right now we're just focusing on this part with Negan, you know. It's like, again, if he was in a cell for what, a year or so, if that's what we're supposed to get from that conversation when he brought that up about the brooches and all that, why keep him so long just to say, well, we don't want to torture you for anything, we actually want you to become one of us and help us? It doesn't add up. I was like, this is the story, this is it.
I will say that I don't recall them ever insinuating that he got tortured. He's just been in a cell, residing within his own fecal matter and cockroaches. Uh, but that's as far as I understood. That's how bad he has it. He looks skinnier now, maybe a little bit malnourished, but I don't know if there was any mention of torture. I can't
No,
recall.
no torture.
No,
It
no.
was they just locked him in it. They said they were gonna have to escalate things. Remember, that's what Croat said. He said, "Well,
Yes. Well, and that's where they mentioned the stuff. I think it's the stuff about his wife, right?
yeah. Annie, if you recall, for people that remember that was from The Walking Dead last season, official, right when he meets up with Annie. There was a girlfriend that he wants. Anyway, she gets pregnant. They have a kid. We find out in Dead City. We don't see them, but he put them on a wagon to go further out. Right? That's that whole jazz.
He
So
made,
anyway,
Negan met Annie, and bada bing, bada boom, got a
yeah,
kid.
bada bing, bada boom, got a kid, gotta move on. Hey, it is what it is. But now he's back in the big city. He wants to live the good life, that whole thing. But
Bright lights.
that's the escalation that Croat's getting at. He's saying, hey, you know what? We know about Annie. We know about Joshua. And we found them. And we're bringing them back to the city. Reunite the family. Now, do you want to work with us? And he was like, "Oh, all right." And then again, a lot of these little dragging out parts. Like I said, I want to focus more on this because this was to be, I mean, it's our namesake, the whole Negan thing. But still, it's just I wanted more. What, they locked him in a confession box at the church because remember their main base is this church. It seemed weird. to see that. And Croat shows up and he's like, have you thought about this? And that's when he starts talking all the stuff and say, hey, I got you a gift. And he made a modified version of Lucille.
So I do have a theory as to why they did all this. Obviously, we know Negan's past, his history of the type of person he was when he led his group before. So this is just him wrestling with trying to do something similar now, being responsible for bringing these groups together. And of course, there will be a lot of carnage and chaos that happens. So it's him wrestling with the demons, because I assume we're going to see an older version of Negan sometime this season, because obviously the character has changed. But now that he's wrapped up in all of this, he's going to probably revert back to his old ways. So I think they were just trying to say, with that whole confessional scene, they're setting this up as him dealing and wrestling with his past, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's just, I just find it hard to believe that here it is, they capture him, and it's really just to recruit him. And so if you're going to leave him in his cell for who knows the amount of time, because they don't really specify. We just got that, like I said, he's mentioned about year one type of thing. So whatever. Seems like it's a good amount of time, because Herschel's a big boy. He's grown up, from when we've seen, when we do jump into Maggie's part. But I don't know. So they have, I take it that Dama has no faith in Croat to be a leader. Meanwhile, all of last season, he was portrayed as the leader. But in this, he's a second. It's like, no. And we get it. Remember, we did hear his backstory. He once was part of the Saviors in that group. Remember? But they thought he was a loose cannon, the whole thing. And they're like, nah, we don't need him. All right. So they cut him. But it's just weird that it's like, all right, now you're saying that Negan not only is your prisoner for us, but now you're going to give him the reins to be the boss, pretty much of their military force. They believe in him that much. I'm sorry if I'm dwelling on that, but this is going to be the plot for the entire season, as we saw toward the end of this. It is Negan's way, or there is, or I was gonna say the highway, but you're not going anywhere, or you're dead. I don't know. I would have preferred if he took power, if there was like, he took out the Croat and convinced everybody why they should follow him. But that's not what's happening here. He is just a pawn to Dama that we don't even know much about. And usually when in these type of shows, like even in early years of The Walking Dead, we knew backstories of these big bosses, the governor, the first governor, or Alpha, and we get it. We get why people follow and why they obey. We don't get it with Dama. We don't know. The old lady, as Christoph, when we get into it, refers to her. They seem to know something we don't. I'm sure we'll get more info on her, but I'm just upset that wasn't cleared up in this first episode. Instead, we get this where she's still just up on the upper level, just like nodding and making the gestures like a queen or something.
So yeah, I did want to make one comment. I do think that we'll probably get a episode backstory about her, similar to how we got in the Daryl Dixon show, with the character in that particular show, The Enemy.
Yeah.
So I think that's possible. But the comment that I was going to make is, I obviously, from what I saw, yes, Negan complied with listening to the Croat in the Dama's requests. I still think he very well can turn on them later. And I think we saw that with the resistance, that there's going to be people that resist on both sides. There's issues with the group that Maggie's working with also. So I think they will rebel at some point. And I think what they want us to just do as visitors, as fans of the show, viewers, to just watch and see what happens.
Yeah,
like they say, wait and see what happens. But I think that Negan will rebel against them at some point this season, because otherwise it's not going to be an exciting show. I think they know that, but that's just my guess.
It's a good guess. So we'll just move on from this, and just to keep with the timeline, because that's the thing. I forgot how many times that they would jump back and forth, and then you have to piece together, like, wait, is this happening before this part and this part? But just to link up with how it makes sense story-wise, when we go to where Maggie and Herschel and Jenny are, Then we see some trucks come to town. That's where we're introduced to Charlie Bird, the new governor, and she's there with Marshall, now the colonel, and with Polanco, her character, who's in charge of their military force that they're putting together. They're looking for people, or they're just going to force you into, it's like a draft, pretty much, right? That's what they're trying to do. And if you don't sign up, like this one guy who said, no, I don't want to join up, like, okay, and they hung him. That's it. It's penalty by death. That this part also doesn't make much sense, because if the marshal was so up and up on the right side of the law, that's why he was hunting down um, Negan, because he killed these judges, and of course the guy didn't know the whole backstory and all the stuff that these evil men were doing. That's why Negan did the killing, but still, he's all on up and up. So you think it's okay that if people say, hey, you know what, I don't want to join your military to go to Manhattan to take over this land. Oh, I mean, I should die. Just kill me. Just hang me. It doesn't make sense. How could he go along with that? That's what I don't buy, because he was such a straight and narrow, by the book type of guy last season. And to see him just bend the knee to this new governor, who we don't even know how this new governor obtained the power, it doesn't add up. It just leaves more questions. It feels like almost like they were like, all right, well, we got to create another type of leader of this type of group. What do we do? Let's just bring somebody in and say they just became the new governor, because that's what she says. I'm the new governor. I don't remember the last governor from this one, so it's like, whatever, but this sounds crazy to say, all right, I need to force everyone to join this group. If not, I'm going to kill you. But it's to go to Manhattan. And a long story short, that we hear the main reason, because Marshall tries to recruit Maggie, eventually gets his way, it's because of the methane. He feels that they have to go to Manhattan, not just for the location, but for the factory, for all the stuff that he saw there, so that way they can rebuild society. They can, bring back the buildings and lights and power and technologies and medicine. And I said it while we were watching this. I'm like, well, that's not all going to come from that. You still need people with the knowledge, the know-how to do these things. It doesn't flow. Like, even just spitting this stuff out, it sounds like I'm jumping all over the place. But this is exactly how he describes it. This is exactly how they portrayed the governor and everything. It's just like quick, bada bing, bada boom. This new person's in charge. He's now running it. Now the marshal is a colonel, and now what's going on here?
So I have a theory, but I want to hear what Carlos has to say first, because it looked like Carlos was about to say something. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of it is sort of implied that, it's been a year, so things changed. But yeah, I do agree with sort of, we don't have a full understanding of the new dynamics with the new settlement with the Babylon and the Marshal and everything. So I will agree, there is some unsettlement in terms of getting an understanding of those power dynamics between the characters.
So I agree with what Carlos said. And the other point that I want to add on is that I personally think that from a writing standpoint, when they came into this season, they said, well, we're going to put Maggie and Negan in complex situations, whereas the groups they are working with, they obviously there's going to be some rebellion within those groups. Now, you mentioned the Marshal. When they had the scene where, Maggie and Jenny were basically going to they had to do that task to take out all the walkers. He was very surprised that they were thrown into that situation, and obviously he didn't agree with it. So that's why I said there's going to be some issues within both groups. Same thing with Negan when he had the whole standoff with Kristoff. Clearly, there are people rebelling because they don't believe Negan. They don't trust this guy as somebody who can be a leader. So I think on both sides, from a writing standpoint, what they did going into this season, they said, well, let's put Negan and Maggie on opposite sides, but making them have issues within the groups that they're a part of, which is going to lead to why they're going to make certain decisions throughout the season.
And the one thing is that Maggie and Negan are both being forced into these situations with
Yes.
threats toward their family. And Marshall puts that threat on Maggie about Herschel and Jenny and all this stuff. If not, then they'll have to go. So you have to go in their stead. I want you part of this. You know the land. You've been there and all that stuff. And he also knows Negan is dead. He's like, Negan's probably out there, and it's just all right, fine. I'll deal with that part. But then when Marshall goes to talk to the new commanding leader, the Polanco character, right? Yeah, it's like he has to prove all that. It doesn't make any sense. She goes, why should I do it? Why should we even bring this person? Why you were forcing every Joe Schmo and saying if they don't, then they're gonna die. Here's Marshall recommending someone who's been there, done that, and has this crazy backstory with all the drama and fighting and all this. And we don't even know who this Polanco person is, how they got this power, but all of a sudden this person is like, no, they're gonna have to prove it. She's gonna have to prove it, And then, like you said, put them in the corral with Jenny and fighting a bunch of walkers.
And I just want to say, I did laugh at this part because I've had the running joke on this show, whether it's a Walking Dead spinoff, any Walking Dead show, we always have to have a scene where the hero is struggling in a battle with the walkers. So you see the walkers are on top of Maggie or they're on top of Negan, and we have to see that at some point in every show. So I laughed because I knew at some point that was going to happen. I didn't expect it to happen this soon in episode 1, but yes, that they did that specifically to show, oh yeah, but we knew Maggie was going to overcome that because this show is about her and Negan. So,
but Jenny was she's a loose cannon on there because Jenny could have died there. I think I could have accepted that if they were like, oh, she does. Okay, well, she's not Herschel. So
I think that would have been quite exciting if that happened because of the promise that Maggie made to Negan that she would take care of Jenny. Now, obviously, Jenny is probably going to still. Well, she's already with Maggie now, going back to Manhattan. So that is going to be an ongoing storyline. If something happens to Jenny, I'm pretty sure Negan won't be happy about that. So we have to watch out for that. But yeah, I would have accepted if she just randomly died in this episode. That would have been quite interesting.
They need to take a page from the old Walking Deads. If you guys remember, old Walking Deads opening episode, we may see some, of course, we'll see reoccurring characters, but then we'll see some new faces with them. Halfway through, we're spending a lot of time with these new people. And then toward the end, something horrible happens and then they die. So they would always pull on the heartstrings like, oh, this person's great. Like this person. Remember the young Rock? Remember when he popped up the kid that played the young Chris Rock?
Oh, yeah.
And he was on this and was like, oh, wow, this is great. He's not a big star, but he's a known star. We know who he is. And then he had his death like that, when he through the doors and stuff in the wall.
Yeah, that was very brutal.
Yeah, very brutal and unexpected. And that's what I'm saying. It would have been great if we would have saw something like this because they sort of mentioned it in a way when there was one scene where Herschel was having a moment with the mom over in their location where they live, the bricks, whatever. And he was talking about giving some stuff away, or there was another girl there with her brothers, and he was like, oh yeah, they may need these things. I was like, oh, so they're mentioning some other kids. And I was like, oh, this would be it. It's like, oh, telling like you don't help. Not only does Herschel have to go in the pit, but those other people, the other kids in your community are going to have to go in the pit. But no, we didn't get that. And like you said, Walker's on top of them. And maybe, who knows? Maybe, how about this? Pull an Escape from New York. If you've seen that movie, Snake Plissken, the whole thing, he had to go and save the president and come back because they planted an explosive in his neck that was timed. If he didn't come back, then in time they couldn't disarm it, and then his head would explode. Let's say Jenny gets bit, and they were like, "Well, we know that they have medicine at that in Manhattan that they've been working on. Just fudge it, we don't know that, but they say they have everything else. Hell, they're making lights and all kinds of stuff. And if you want treatment because it's just a bite without amputation, it wasn't that much of it. We need medicine." So now you have to go to save Jenny's life. Okay, there you go. There's some more reason, but whatever. They didn't do that. They go to kill all the walkers. One's about to sneak up behind. Marshall takes that one out. And Polanco is satisfied. She's like, oh, wow, that's great. So she could fight. Why question this? This is Marshall is now your colonel. If you're questioning your colonel, then what's the point? It's not like some grunt said, "Hey, my friend over here knows how to fight. I think he can kill some walkers." No, this comes from a high-ranking officer for this recommendation. Plus, she's been there. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer just on that fact alone that we all know that she has been there. She was there with Marshall. So I don't know why this was up for debate, and there was this whole proving. I get it for the story, so some action because let's face it, there wasn't a lot of action in this first episode. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. I was not a fan of how they had to put that whole thing together. So I don't know.
I agree. And not a lot of action. Like I said, this episode they spent a lot of time setting stuff up. So I am expecting that to change going into the next episode and so on and so forth. There has to be more going on. Now you've established that Negan and Maggie, they're once again on opposite sides. So and they need to pick up the pace in the next episode, I think. And something major should happen to really capture your attention and keep you invested.
We also have a Mr. Pierce. That's that young guy who I guess is for the New Babylon Federation. Is their historian, right? He was all like, "Oh yeah, they're the buildings and the people and this and that." And Herschel was like, "No, it's all full of walkers. It's not that pretty there." And he's drawing some pictures of the bridges and buildings falling. And all this. And the guy's amazed. He's like, whoa, can I keep this? Again, put the pause button. You're going to tell me, Mr. Historian, that you don't know that there's people in this group here that have been there, that have been to Manhattan? Like a historian would know not just the history books, but also the history that's taking place around you. If you have people that have been there, then you interview them, you talk to them. What did you see? What's changed from this? Compare your notes. That again threw me off. Now, I'm sure some of you guys and gals listening and watching was like, yeah, but remember, they took them from the bricks, they moved them to New Babylon. Okay, that's great. We don't know the locations. The governor, even when that person that they hanged who refused to join the cause, they said that person was from another community. They didn't name that community. So we just have to imagine that Federation, New Babylon is a large city area. Then there's some other smaller ones around. The bricks is just one of those smaller ones. And that's what's going on here. But anyway, we know Pierce, and it sounds like he's going to join that party to document, because that's what the governor said, right? He was like, you're going to be the one that documents all this stuff that happens, and that way we can have records of all this. So, all right, now we got a new crew member. Whatever. I don't know. It didn't do it for me. We talked about it before with the pacing and stuff, but even just the character development, introducing these characters, it just something feels off. It doesn't. It's not sticking. It's not. Think of Legos. You know, you put a Lego. It's like, oh, look at this piece. It doesn't. You can snap it together. There you go. Even if it doesn't look right, it still snaps. It still connects. This doesn't connect for me. So whatever. Anybody else have any issues with Pierce and the historian included in this?
No, it's just I was a pretty weird. The historian and the Herschel conversation was kind of weird. Like the way it started and everything, and I'm like, why the hell is Herschel all
It dragged and it was incomplete. It doesn't seem. Oh, you've been there? Ask why, when. Let's sit down and let's talk. Don't say, let me keep this picture. No. If I'm an historian and let's say I'm talking to people and it's like, yeah, I want to go see what's happening in Germany or something like that. And then somebody says, well, I fought in World War II. I was over there. Oh, wow. No, I'm going to sit down and talk. I'm like, hey, tell me everything that happened. Where did you serve? What was your unit like? Where tell me the stories. Who did you meet? The characters, the people, their life. What about your life? Why did you join? Were you drafted? And, go into depth. I didn't get that reaction. I was expecting more enthusiasm from Pierce from hearing this and wanting to befriend Herschel, because that's what I'm thinking. I'm a historian. This guy that because he even says, he's like, oh, I spent all my time reading books and all this stuff. I'm pretty sure everything I know is accurate. It's like, okay, toot that horn. But this dude was there. Hell, he was a captive. None of that comes up. None of this. Instead, he draws some picture, and the guy's like, "Can I keep it?" It again, I guess it comes down to writing. I can't really blame the actors. It's like they're delivering their lines, and that's what was written on the page. So it was incomplete. It felt incomplete, and it's not a realistic flow of a conversation for something like this, especially if you're a historian. If I can say if it was some Joe Schmo who's like, it's like, oh yeah, you been there? Yeah. Look, I'll draw a picture. Oh, all right, whatever. But no, this guy was all about the facts, and this didn't add up. So I'm not thrilled with that. But yep, let's just move on to the other big portion of this episode. And it's back at the church. Now we see the factions. Well, outside the church area, I should say, we see the factions are all getting together. Now, what was this? Was it? And we weren't sure. It definitely a huge walker. Huge walker. I'm assuming this is like the mutated king one that we saw last season. Remember the King Walker? I think they called him. That was with the showrunners. Something like that. And then was he fighting another walker, or was that a human? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's walker and walker combat.
See, so how does that happen? How does that happen that a walker is fighting another walker? Unless it's just because this one is mutated, there's something wrong with him that he's willing to fight anything that's moving. That's what I'm gathering then. If it's gonna fight, because remember, they're not really fighting anything. Walkers are walking because natural instinct to move and to eat. Right? That's the whole thing. And he's not doing it. He's doing it for fun. He's fighting and he's killing. I need more. I need more context on that particular walker and what's going on. Explain it. They don't. And then even when Negan says, "I've never seen a walker that big," it's like, yeah, it's a big one. What? Wait, what?
Yeah, there wasn't really much explanation of that. I guess that, they need activities to keep them preoccupied. So we see how they treat the walkers, using them for energy and all this other stuff. So this, I guess, it's believable that they would do this also, but wasn't much explanation. That's just something else, I guess.
We have to link this up, and I'm gonna, you guys, if you don't know, well, you guys know, but if the people listening to I love G.I. Joe. Follow, I collect them, the whole thing. There was a Dr. Mindbender. You guys remember Dr. Mindbender? And he was the wacky doctor. He created Serpentor, taking DNA from all these other emperors and creating one. I'm seeing Croat as a Dr. Mindbender then, because as we get into it later toward the end of the episode, when they see the weapons and all that stuff, and of course the methane, all this comes from the mind of the Croat. He did all this. So I'm assuming he had something to do with this huge walker that's now just a monster at this point. It's not even a walker, because if it's willing to kill even walkers, it doesn't care. Now, can it obey commands? We don't know. We saw it destroy one, but they never killed the big one. It's like, all right, he did his job. That was entertaining. I'll kill it, or else it'll kill us. We don't know. But we definitely know the Croat is their mad scientist. He is their Dr. Mindbender for this group. So we'll see where that goes. But they take everything inside. As you know, the three factions have this once a month meeting, right? They gather together. So Dama told them, hey, they want to talk about something coming to the church. They're all there. We hear organ music playing. I don't know why in my head I thought that was just for the show until they actually show an organ player, up top. Like, I was like, oh, that's it. All right. You got some music in the church. Negan walks down the aisle to the center, to the front of the church, and then the podium, and he gives his speech talking about, we'll just jump into the power equals power, naming of the episode, talking about all the stuff and that they need to unite. They don't agree with each other. They don't like each other. He gets it. But there's a group coming outside from the New Babylon Federation. They're building an army. They want to take over the city, and it's in their best interest to unite. Okay. That seems to work. But this is, again, where I have an issue, and you guys can jump in. We hear one guy not into it. Christoph is his name, right? He's sitting up in the front. He stands up. He says, I don't want to have to fight for you. I don't want to deal with having to help you with your problems. Pause again. When did he say that this was his problem? He clearly said, this is Negan, clearly said there is an army coming to invade the Manhattan, to take over Manhattan. Okay? Not to just take over his area. No, they want to wipe everybody. So where did Christoph get it into his head that this was Negan's problem? Right? When did I miss something?
I think
No.
it was implied with that. It's like, oh, like they're maybe because wasn't Negan trying to say like that they're trying to get the methane and stuff. So that's why it
Well,
would be their problem, because they're the only ones that have the means to power up the city.
well, he brings it up after. Once he does what he does, which we'll get into, then he brings it up. And we might as well just do it now. Yeah. So while Christoph is mouthing off and saying all this stuff, and that's when he brings up the old lady, Dama. He says, "Oh, and I don't care what that old lady has to say." And I think it's Croat that hands Negan the modified Lucille. And then he grabs it and he points it at Croat, and the guy says, at Christoph. And Christoph says, "Get that out of my face." And we see at the end, it's also a taser. He shocks him. He drops, and then that's when he says, "Oh, maybe I didn't make myself clear. I don't care about all this stuff, what's happening, but I do know that they don't care about us. They're going to come, they'll take it. It's like, you see that we have all this power. We have the methane that brings us light. We have the weapons. We have the trucks. You see it. We can do things." And then he had two guys in the back with flamethrowers, and they start bursting off flames at the crowd. And so, we have the tools, the power. We need pretty much the manpower now. That's what they don't have. So they need everybody to unite, to fight this battle. And I don't know, man.
Well, I just want I'm going to make a comment. I'll go back to what I said earlier. The Christoph situation, that is once again to introduce conflict. There are certain people that don't align with the beliefs of the Dama. They don't really like Negan, so I expect this season that that's going to cause issues within that group, the same way that there's going to be issues in the group that Maggie's involved in. But I will say this, from the standpoint of somebody who is an adversary, such as the Dama and Croat, they're very foolish if they think that Negan can't get this group to also turn on them. And that's why I say I want to see what happens. If they are dumb enough to think that there are certain people that will not align with Negan, because again, I expect Negan to eventually turn on both of those people in this show. Obviously, he can't do it yet because he's worried about the safety of his wife and his child. But that is the path I think they're going to take. And I do think that the Christoph guy, because he got showed up in this little interaction with Negan, this guy is still going to be an issue with Negan. I could see him challenging Negan again as the season goes on.
I think he liked him. I think, remember, he made him that bad. If he really think about that, if he really didn't like him, then don't do any favors and be like, you know what? I don't approve of this. This is Dama's idea. Go ahead. You try to do all this. I don't believe it. He's pushing. He wants this. Remember, he handed him the bat. Even in that moment, he was like, here.
You're talking about.
I'm thinking about Croat. I'm thinking Croat.
No,
So you think Christoph is still alive?
Oh, yeah, no, he is alive. They walked out. They were walking him out. They were holding him up as they walked out. What I'm saying is that this guy got showed out in front of his fellow peers. I'm pretty sure he is not happy with Negan, and he's going to continue to challenge him in terms of when he tries to do stuff, because that was another character we saw when they had the fight between the walkers. So clearly they want us to pay attention to this character for a reason. So
he has a name. He has a name. So
yes. So I think, again, Negan is going to have some people that don't agree with him, and they're going to make his job a little bit difficult. And I think that is intentional. But I also think there are some people that will be willing to work with Negan, and that is the problem. That's going to be a problem for the Croat and for Dama, because they can align with Negan, and then as a group, they can take out those two. if they need to. But I want to see how they play this again, because they'll have the whole thing with Negan's wife and kid involved. That makes it a lot more interesting. So he has to play along. But there's going to come a point in time where he turns against them. I think we all know that's going to happen at some point.
What about his buddy who was playing the violin in the cell across from him? He just left him. At least say, hey, if I'm going to come out here and do this dirty work for you, can you bring up my buddy? You know, he plays an instrument. He could play with the organ player. You know, they could do a duet. Let's, I don't know. Man,
we'll see.
We'll see. You know, and so there's this segment there. That's over. That's the last we see of them. When we jump back to where Maggie is, as we mentioned, they had the big fight thing. She proved herself. Now they're getting ready. You see everyone gathering up. At this point, Jenny is also going, but then Herschel says he wants to go. And Maggie's like, after everything that's happened, and Herschel's like, well, you only want to go back because of Negan and your guilt. And it's like, oh man, are we doing this rubber band thing again? It's like we already say, oh, you go for Negan. You don't. You hate him. You want to be his friend. I don't want that anymore. I'm done with that. I'm done with it. You know, and the whole Herschel thing, that's when that Maggie takes out those pictures, and then we see Dama and all kinds of stuff. It's like, what's this all about? He's like, it's just some billboards I saw when I was over there. What's up with this kid? Something's going on. He's something. But we clearly see. What was that?
He's got a screw loose.
Oh, yeah. And rightfully so. Kid's been through a lot. All these kids. I mean, there's not even enough counseling hours or counselors to save any of these kids, especially in this environment that they're being brought up in. It's out there. So there's no way. That's why it always made sense when people were like, oh, I can't see Maggie getting all tough like this. I was like, well, I can. She's had everybody around her die. Her dad, her sister, her husband, if you want to call him. I mean, she's had a hard life.
Here's the thing. I gotta say this. I hate that pretty much almost every single Maggie and Herschel interaction is a contentious one, or it's a like there's no levity in that relationship.
No.
It's like everything is just so glim and dark and pissed off at each other and teenage angst, and it's so much, man.
You see it. And Rich sees it. I see it, but Maggie doesn't see it, because remember what she said? Oh, once I come back, we're going to pick up where we left off. Everything's going to be great. Where did you see any of that? We don't see it. You just, no.
That's a great question. Let me make this controversial comment. I do agree with what Carlos said, and I do apologize, but I think we're entitled to have an opinion. Just my opinion. Herschel, the artist, is a lot better than Herschel, the actor, because that scene where he got into it with his mom, I did laugh a little bit, the way he's yelling at the mom and all this other stuff. It's like, yes, the rebellious teenager. I don't really care about that. I know they got to have that relationship because Maggie also has had these back and forths with Negan. So I understand the conflict. And like you said, Adam, he's been through a lot, but not too convincing from my standpoint, because I did laugh a little bit at the emotion that he had in the scene, but I get it. So, but if we are to believe, when they had that shot at the end where he finally was able to throw the knife, if we are to believe that he is actually going to go out there and somehow get involved in this fight, I do think that is laughable, because he is not ready for that type of all the type of chaos that comes with being in that environment with Maggie and Negan there. So hopefully he stays. I don't want to see him go over there. He needs to stay where he is at right now for the time being.
Yeah, and I don't want him to play the same role of like, oh, he gets captured and that's the whole thing. Because right at the beginning of this episode, when Croat was talking with Negan in the cell, he brings up the boy again, and that's who he's talking about, Herschel. Mm-hmm. You know, where's the boy? And he's like, oh, you know, she with Mama Bear, and Mama Bear's good. And he gives that whole little speech about Mama Bear, Maggie, and stuff. It's like, and again, like you just said, the whole thing with Herschel, he should be more appreciative. His mom saved him. Come on now. Don't tell me that. No, I can't. I'm not buying it. If she did all this stuff, she's teaching you how to hunt and do all these things. She says, stay back here. They're forcing me the whole thing. He should be understanding. Be like, all right, Mom, I get it. But if you ever need help, if you have something, figure out, send a message, do something. Or how about this? if I'm going to look at a calendar, make my own. We don't even know if they have dates and time, but say, hey, I'm going to have 2 weeks. If I don't hear from you 2 weeks, I'm coming after you. I'm coming to get you. Like, all right, a deal. Something. Build something. Give him more of like substance as opposed to being an annoying teenager in this situation. I'm not buying it. But anyway, it ends not only just with that, but then we see everyone gathering out the gate, like they're all building together this army, and I'm assuming they think they're ready to go. That's the way they that depiction, right? Was that we're good now. We have enough people. I don't think that's enough people, but I'm what I'm also assuming is that they are going to now move to another town and another location because isn't that what they were doing? It's like trying to gather people for it. They went to Bricks, did that whole thing, and maybe they're going to go to some of the other groups. We might not even see all of that. Maybe we'll just see right when they're getting on a boat, and it's like, all right, we got a bunch of people.
Yeah, no. Well, no. My comment is the next episode. We need to now see them making their way to Manhattan and already over there. They need to accelerate all that. The group is together now, right? So let's get them over to the island and take it from there because that's really what this is all leading up to. Both sides they've chosen their sides, even if reluctantly making that choice. Now we need to get to the conflict. Now both sides back and forth. The next episode, we need to see some action and all types of craziness.
And before I forget, because I wrote this down, it looks like we're not going to see Marshall's backstory family. Because remember, there was that whole episode where why did he go to New York in the first place? Why did he really care? Is it all about Negan? No,
brother.
Yeah, his brother, and he had his daughters or some other. Remember that whole family dynamic? And Maggie brought that up. It's like, oh, if you like it so much here at Babylon, New Babylon, then how come your family's not here? And he just brushed it off. So it's like, let's not talk about them. So I'm like, oh, I guess they're not going to play a major part in this. I'm hoping that not only that it gets better because we all want it to get better, but I'm hoping that we see more returning cast members from Walking Dead proper because the way they set this up, like the new governor said, and talking about going to all the different groups trying to get people to sign up and join the military. It's a possibility that people had left the Commonwealth and joined some of those other groups, and then you can throw them in. Hell, maybe Aaron with the Robo Arm, why not throw him in this? I don't think we'll see Ezekiel because I think he'll always be part of the Commonwealth, and if they do a spin-off of the Commonwealth, it'll be him. But you could put some of the other supporting members and sprinkle them across. It'd be cool to throw that in, and maybe they'll remember Maggie and reunite. Do something because right now, what is it? It's more of what we saw in season 1. Maggie just running around by herself, right? Because who's she? She's going to buddy up with Marshall? I don't think that's going to happen. Marshall's going to be with Polanco and with the governor. Wait, is the governor? I don't think the governor's going. But definitely Polanco and some of the other people, and they'll introduce characters. But my issue, and I said it, too slow. Only now 8 episodes. I felt we should have had more. There should have been more impact. There should have been more drama, action, something unique for all of this. It maybe a little more grit in the Negan's character delivery of the lines. Just more something. It felt empty. If the lines weren't delivered right, they felt empty as well. None of this gelled. It just doesn't. I'm down on this. Honestly, I'm down on this. And I don't know. Go ahead. Anybody want to say anything else before we?
No, I agree with most of the sentiments. It was a really slow paced episode in a story that seems a little bit convoluted. Um, they're following 2 factions with a whole bunch of people. Let's see how this progresses. Could potentially get better, especially when there's more action integrated into it. I mean, action that has stakes in it, like the whole Maggie scene where she was dumped into the the barrage of walkers, everybody knew nothing was going to
Yeah,
happen there.
that's what I'm saying. They should have thrown in some other people as well, because remember that was the whole thing. It was like, oh, prove if they're worthy to join the military force. All right, well then throw in some other jabronis and then have them die. At least something to happen. But no, she like you said, we know she's not going to die.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in line with you guys.
All right. So, I mean, we'll do this something a little different. Remember, star rating, because we do this over at the Koalition, 1 out of 5 stars. And I'm giving this a 3. I'm giving this a 3. I'm glad to see the sets. I like the set designs. It looks cool. I'm thrilled that we still have King Zombie, King Walker, that big morph thing. I want to see more with that. They have something here. Like I said, it's like the city and all the craziness, the factions. Okay, that's cool, but they need more world building, and I'm not getting it. And throwing in another governor and another second in command who thinks that she's the best thing ever for all this stuff, and then Marshall still around now being promoted to colonel, which means absolutely nothing, right? Because we still don't know. It's right. They don't even say what Polanco's title is. So whatever it is above the colonel. It just and Dama. We still don't know about that. But you ended the last season with that weird cliffhanger of the whole thing of who she is, and then Croat bending the knee and all that stuff to her. Uh, Too many questions not being answered, and people are like, oh, you can't get everything we can't get all the answers. No, but you could at least answer some of the questions from the last season to, keep things moving, keep them first. Like, all right, this is it. What's going on? She does have some weird powers, or she owns some property, whatever. I mean, they tried to say she was always part of the Broadway show scene or whatever, and that's why the actors all respected her in the theater. Remember that's it. That's not strong enough for all these other factions to respect her and then say, look at Christoph. He seems already gung ho and pissed. What's stopping him from just attacking? If he had no fear toward her and definitely doesn't fear Croat. I don't know. Too many questions and not enough answers. And maybe this is something they didn't think of till after the fact. Like maybe I'm assuming like you're writing things down, and then you give the lines and everyone delivers, and then you're the writer and you're watching this and you're like, you know what? This looked better on paper. Now that I see it played out, not so much. And that's what I'm getting. But hey, this is 1 of 8. There's 7 more. So that's my 3 out of 5. Rich, what do you give it?
Yeah, I also give it a 3 out of 5. Just an average episode. Glad to see the show is back, but I definitely want to see some improvement from here on out.
Carlos?
I would give it a 2 out of 5. It just wasn't well paced. There was a lot of confusion. They didn't really bring us up to speed to the season after a long layoff. We still the stakes don't make sense as much. We didn't get as much Negan and Maggie as I feel like we should, and the Herschel Maggie relationship irks me to death. I said this in season 1. It is continuing again in season 2. It's terrible. I hate their dynamic. It is a drag to watch them. I just don't like the way that they're setting those two up. And now Herschel is some brainwashed kid that is getting driven back to Medusa or something. I'm not looking forward to that portion of it. I already see it. It's not going to be good.
It doesn't make any sense either. And it's like, all right, so then what? And he goes back and he stays there to do what? I don't get. Is it a sacrifice? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's not like Maggie was never there for him. She was always there. So I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it. It bothers me. I'm just hoping for more development of the story, the characters, and just more grit. That first season, wow, even that first was very strong. Remember, there was bodies jumping out, the walkers, all the craziness, the fighting. It just had some grit. This it feels like they were playing it safe with a lot of things. And
I mean, the Negan and Maggie dynamic also wasn't my favorite either. It was just Maggie being all pissed off the whole time. It's like, oh, thanks for saving my life. You still killed my husband.
yeah,
Thanks for holding my hand. You still killed my husband. Thanks for giving me food. You still killed my husband. It was like it was just getting old, but at least they were sort of like in an adventure, and the scenery was new, and the adventure, it felt like a little adventure trying to get to one place to the other, and all these different scenarios. And this one, it's just like it wasn't that.
wasn't that is right. But you know what? It's all right. We got some more episodes. We have to see this out. It cannot get worse because it wasn't horrible. It wasn't a world beyond type of show, but it was a little rough, especially for a show that we've been waiting for a while to come back and to come back strong. And it came back with a whimper. But hey, we'll be back next week for the second episode, and hopefully that one picks up the pace and just like revives everything. I want to see more craziness happening. Yes, that crazy Walker. I want to see some other stuff. I want some more character development. Remember, there was a whole other group that Negan and Maggie had befriended when they were on Manhattan that time. Remember, a lot of them are dead now, but still, there was that dynamic. What do we have now? We don't have it. We have Pierce, the historian. Okay. That's the only other one. So we'll probably get more, but I just felt like if you're going to build an army, then this is where you start introducing all these different people already. It's like, oh, all right, so I have to go. Yeah. Who are you? I'm the historian. Who are you? They call me the gunslinger. Who are you? They call me, I don't know. You come up with different, introduce characters, crazy people. Remember Snake Eyes? We talked about Snake Eyes. That's what we call that one dude that was part of Maggie's old group that had the mask on and wouldn't talk because of some tragedy that happened in his life. But he was, kill walkers, that type of stuff. Let's bring in these type of characters, people that have all kinds of mental issues because of their environment. Things that
What happened to the people at the hilltop?
The hilltop is
The
gone.
bully.
Yeah, that's some. Yeah, bully, all that stuff. They just dropped it, and instead they sprinkled little things. New people here, like this governor. I don't care. Do we need another governor? And then where's the character in the governor? Like it's just a lady. Just like if it's a lady, make something crazy. Give her a hook for a hand or something. Everyone is too clean, too clean. This is always my argument for all these shows. I want to see dirtiness, grittiness. These people are still living a hard life. Doesn't matter if they have a community or not. Look, they're chasing and want to break it down and get control of Croat's compound because of methane. Things are really hard still, but yeah, everybody looks clean. Even with Negan, that really bothers me that he's all clean shaven and stuff. It's like, if you've been in a cell, he should look all disheveled, and then they're like, right, we're gonna clean you up so that way you can present in front of these people. All right. Or even last in Walking Dead, the last season, they threw in those big numbers. Remember the months and stuff that they 1 month later, 3 years. So they could have thrown that at the bottom so we wouldn't have to guess how long he's been in this cell and eating roaches. And it just I got issues, man. I got issues, but I hope for the best. I could keep rambling. I'm just disappointed. That's the truth. I'm disappointed. I expected more for this because the Daryl Dixon, that's a strong spinoff. We love Daryl Dixon. That episode coming back with the women in the cabin and all that stuff, and what they were planning to do. Oh, fantastic. So people, if you're jumping in and you're like, oh man, that's his only spinoff I was watching, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Go watch Daryl Dixon season 1 and 2. That is fun. They explain how Daryl ended up in France. Whenever I tell anybody that I cover that show, that's the first question they ask me. How did that happen? Because it just wasn't he in Georgia? How? It's not a quick ride. And I explain it, but yeah, go check that out if you haven't. We also cover it. You can find this. It's all over here on the Koalition. You'll see it. Just type in Daryl Dixon, I am Negan, and it'll pop up. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we will be back for episode 2 next week, everybody. Peace.
Peace.